I want you to take a second and just, well, imagine that your daily to-do list involves moving $2,000 trillion a year.
That is, I mean, that's a staggering number to even wrap your head around.
Right. And imagine you are managing this massive flow of capital for 6,000 different multinational corporations, and they are spread all across the globe.
It's basically the circulatory system of the world.
Exactly. And that is the everyday reality for Jane Fraser, the CEO of Citigroup.
You know, operating at that kind of scale means you are the plumbing that keeps the global economy functioning. You get to see the earliest indicators of where the world is heading long before those trends ever make it to the front page of the financial press.
Because your vantage point is entirely structural.
Yes, exactly.
And that structural vantage point is the foundation of our source material today.
Right.
We're looking at an edited transcript of really fascinating conversation from February 2026. It was published in the McKinsey Quarterly.
Right. It features McKinsey's Eric Kutcher speaking directly with Jane Fraser.
And the mission for this deep dive is to extract Fraser's playbook for navigating what is, frankly, a highly volatile global economy. We're going to analyze her radical transformation of a legacy banking behemoth, and we'll examine her somewhat surprising takes on AI and leadership.
Her perspective really does provide a unique window into the future of both global finance and technology.
It does. Okay, let's unpack this. Fraser obviously spends a significant portion of her time traveling the globe.
It practically lives on an airplane, yeah.
Right. And she distills the current geopolitical and economic landscape into these two very distinct mindsets that she observes, protectors and builders.
This is such a great framework.
It is. She categorizes Europe predominantly under this protect what we have mindset.
Which makes sense. It's a defensive posture. It's really focused on preserving existing systems, protecting legacy wealth, and managing these incredibly complex regulatory environments.
Yeah, and she contrasts that directly with the U.S., China, and the Middle East.
Yeah.
She identifies those regions as operating with a build what we need for the future mentality.
They are aggressively forward-looking.
She actually frames this using a sports analogy, which I found really helpful. She contrasts a team sport dynamic against a tug of war.
Right, so when she observes the Middle East, specifically places like Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi, she sees the team sport model in action.
Meaning everyone is working together.
Exactly. The players might occupy different positions across various sectors, but the overarching economic agenda is unified. It's cohesive.
Whereas in other regions, economic growth functions more like a tug of war between competing political and corporate interests. Or, the whole team is just stuck playing pure defense.
And when you're playing pure defense, you are completely unable to advance any kind of comprehensive growth strategy, which explains why certain regions are accelerating right now, while others just appear completely stalled out.
Yeah, and speaking of stalling out, Fraser also provides a really nuanced take on global economic resilience. Because despite massive shocks, COVID hangovers, global conflicts, policy shifts, the system has actually held up remarkably well.
It has, but she makes a critical distinction about who is actually resilient. That resilience is highly concentrated.
Right, so the large multinational companies, they've weathered the turbulence effectively because they possess structural diversity.
They rely on diverse supply chains, they have multiple revenue streams, and expansive geographic footprints. So a shock in one market is easily absorbed by stability in another.
But the pain is falling heavily on the smaller companies, the fourth-tier suppliers or local retailers.
Because they lack those built-in geographic and operational buffers. When supply chains constrict or when capital gets expensive, they have zero shock absorbers. They just end up bearing the absolute brunt of the macroeconomic volatility.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because her assessment of macroeconomic volatility takes a very sharp turn when discussing the watch items for 2026.
Yeah, the risks are shifting.
She identifies that developed markets are starting to exhibit what she calls emerging market-like fiscal risks.
Which is a terrifying phrase if you understand the mechanics of it. In a traditional emerging market crisis, natural constraints usually limit the global fallout. But in a developed market, if fiscal and monetary policy become too deeply intertwined.
That's the fiscal dominance scenario, right?
Exactly. If that happens, the resulting instability becomes systemic almost immediately. Central banks could be forced to prioritize government debt sustainability over simply targeting inflation.
And a crash under those conditions threatens global liquidity on a massive, massive scale.
It does, and she connects these high-level macroeconomic mechanics directly to something you and I and everyone listening feels every day. the affordability crisis.
Right. It is just more expensive to have a good quality of life now.
Mhm.
Housing, living standards, it has all surged.
And this economic dissatisfaction inevitably translates into political reality. Voter behavior shifts dynamically based on this exact affordability metric.
It dictates how people vote.
Completely. And it will trigger major political consequences in different countries at different times, depending on their specific tipping points.
And that affordability crisis is just one piece of a very complex puzzle for 2026. She points to the looming threat of global tariffs, a softening labor market, incredibly high asset prices that could correct sharply.
Plus the persistent geopolitical tensions.
Yeah, and escalating cyber threats to fundamental payment networks. Her explicit warning for navigating the year ahead is literally seatbelts on.
Seatbelts on for 2026. And operating a century-old institution in a seatbelts-on environment requires serious agility, which is what drove Fraser to radically simplify Citigroup.
I want to get into that because when she took over as CEO back in March 2021, she realized the old model was dead. The bank's legacy model was built on trying to be all things to all people in almost 100 different countries.
And she recognized that historical success, that massive geographical footprint, was actually creating immense operational drag. Maintaining localized consumer banking operations everywhere was just no longer a viable business model for the modern world.
So they went in with surgical cuts.
Truly surgical. They sold off their local consumer businesses entirely. They stepped away from the neighborhood banking model in international markets to focus purely on clients with cross-border needs.
Meaning multinational corporations, global supply chains, international entrepreneurs.
Exactly. And to execute this, they had to dismantle the internal bureaucracy. They completely removed 4 entire layers of management.
Entire layers, that fundamentally changes the velocity of decision-making.
Oh, absolutely. And by abandoning that fragmented local model, they also eliminated the need for individual country plans. You no longer have to formulate and debate 100 separate strategic plans every single year.
The administrative relief there alone frees up massive amounts of executive bandwidth.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this whole restructuring was really about migrating the institution onto a single platform grid.
Right.
Instead of operating as this disjointed collection of local banks with siloed databases, Citi standardized everything. A manager in New York now looks at the exact same data structure as a counterpart in Singapore or London.
They can monitor capital flows up, down, and across the globe seamlessly. They aren't just a bank anymore. They are a preeminent modern infrastructure for multinationals.
Yes, and that unified modern infrastructure is what seamlessly supports the tech revolution they're pushing right now, especially regarding blockchain and tokenization.
Which is such an often hyped topic. But Fraser isn't just theorizing about blockchain. Citi's actually doing it.
Well, the conversation draws a very hard line between the speculative hype of cryptocurrency coins and the actual utility of tokenizing financial assets.
Right, because current coin systems have severe flaws for institutional use.
Massive flaws. If you try to use public crypto to move institutional money, you trigger a nightmare of tax, accounting, and anti-money laundering complexities. Plus, there's a massive transaction cost just to use the on and off ramp.
Converting fiat to crypto and back.
Exactly.
Well,
That friction sits at around 7%. For a multinational moving billions of dollars, a 7% fee is structurally unworkable.
So the functional solution is tokenizing the existing fiat system. And the transcript shares a concrete example of this. Citi has linked its 247 clearing capabilities directly to tokenization.
Meaning money can move instantly from a New York City account to an HSBC or Lloyd's account in London.
Bypassing all the traditional hurdles of legacy correspondent banking, it operates multi-market, multi-currency, and it is always on.
And Fraser predicts this tokenization is the future. It's going to expand far beyond just currency. She explicitly says it is coming to equity markets and even commodities like oil.
Which is huge. And this willingness to fundamentally restructure their underlying tech carries over directly into her approach to AI. She has this incredible analogy for AI, the AI dishwasher.
This is perhaps the most vital takeaway for any company trying to integrate AI right now.
Yeah, because the common trap is viewing AI as a way to just automate an existing manual process. She says it's like trying to build a robotic hand to stand at your sink and scrub a dish with a sponge.
Which is absurd when you think about it. A physical dishwasher does not mimic human hands. It washes dishes using a completely different process. High-pressure water jets, specific thermal conditions.
The mechanism of the old way and the new way share absolutely no similarities.
Right. And companies need to apply AI exactly like a dishwasher. You have to rethink the whole process top down rather than just automating manual drudgery.
So what are the actual results of this top-down AI dishwasher approach?
Mhm.
The transcript provides hard numbers. CITI has 30,000 coders, and those coders are already 9% more productive this year.
And that gain isn't from basic autocomplete functions. It's thanks to what Fraser calls agentic AI.
Explain agentic AI for us.
It's a paradigm shift from advisory systems to autonomous participants. These are AI agents acting and working together. They can take independent action, make decisions within parameters, and collaborate with other agents to execute really complex multi-step operations.
It turns the technology from a passive tool into an active driver.
Yes, but this raises an important question regarding the risks. Because this hyperproductivity has a dark side. The exact same autonomous capabilities scaling their workflows are being weaponized by malicious actors.
And this is what keeps her awake at night. The scale of the threat is just staggering. CITI faces billions of cyber, fraud, and money laundering attacks daily.
Billions, every single day. It's a scary combo because the adversaries have access to the exact same technological multipliers as the bank. It's a real-time battle.
So leading an organization through billions of daily cyber attacks while simultaneously overhauling its entire technological and geographical footprint, that requires a very specific reality of leadership.
It's incredibly difficult, especially bringing external talent into a century-old institution.
But she's had success doing it.
Mm.
And she uses this brilliant psychological tactic to attract them. She knows that top talent gets bored tweaking already optimized systems.
Right. Elite talent doesn't want to just turn the dials 1% to the left. They want to build. So by telling them they get to build the leading franchise again, she tapped into their desire to create a completely new legacy.
But attracting that talent is just step one. I found it fascinating when Eric Kutcher asked what surprised her most about being CEO.
Her answer was so honest. The sheer shocking volume of stakeholder management.
The demands on her time are infinite. So she relies on a framework called the quarterly intent to stay focused, the 80-20 rule.
Yes, establishing that core intent filters out the noise. It ensures she and the executive team focus 80% of the value from 20% of the effort, rather than getting dragged into peripheral disputes.
So what does this all mean for how she actually handles these people? Because the stakeholder management is relentless.
She relies on advice from her executive coach, which centers on the power of empathy. When faced with aggressive or resistant stakeholders, her approach is to ask, what are they fearful of?
That is so insightful. Identifying that fear allows you to construct a win-win scenario. And as she notes, finding that win-win saves a lot of agony and friction down the line.
Empathy is a highly effective operational tool. But even with empathy, the job is grueling. She tells future leaders that the role requires intense emotional resilience and physical strength. You need big ears and thick skin.
Because people will constantly tell you what they think you want to hear. The big ears are required to actively seek the real, unvarnished truth.
And the thick skin is to survive the criticism and keep executing the long-term plan.
Exactly. And the ultimate legacy she wants to leave behind isn't just technological. A bank with a brain, the AI, the tokenization, she says that's just table stakes for survival. She wants to leave behind a human bank.
Where relationships are nurtured and the people are celebrated, because the defining competitive advantage remains human.
Yeah. And then she pairs that deeply human vision with a very deadpan addition at the very end of the interview. She says, and the other thing, obviously, is global dominance.
It perfectly captures the duality of the job. Empathy paired with a fierce drive to win.
We have covered a massive amount of ground in this deep dive, from shifting global mindsets protectors versus builders to the fragile realities of the 2026 economy and those emerging market fiscal risks.
We looked at CITI's ruthless simplification, the genius AI dishwasher analogy, and the raw emotional resilience required to lead through it all.
And these lessons aren't just for global CEOs.
Not at all. Stripping away the unnecessary in your own work, looking at problems with a builder mindset, and leading with empathy, those are incredibly practical tools for anyone's daily life.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today. Think about your own daily workflow and the tools you use. Are you just trying to build a robot hand to scrub your dishes faster? Or are you ready to step back, scrap the old routine entirely, and invent your own dishwasher? It might be the exact shift in perspective you need to stay ahead. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Thank you for listening.